You are listening to the Section 247 podcast, the self-proclaimed #1 audio man cave in all of podcasting. The podcast can be found at anchor.fm/SEC247pod and everywhere else you can find podcasts. Be sure to download, rate, and share. You might just win a shirt. Follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at SEC247pod. And now, the hashtag 2Mics.
Welcome to episode 55 of the Section 247 podcast on sportstalkphilly.com, on Twitter at sportstalkphl. As always, the Section 247 podcast is presented by Michael's Glass Company, serving the Philadelphia tri-state area since 1978. All your glass needs, windows, shower doors, sneeze guards, you name it, they kind of do it. They do cool deck railings now in glass. I like those. North Street, Northeast Philly, 215-338-3293. You can tell them the 2Mics sent you. I am Michael Lipinski. I am joined, as always, by Michael Watkins. And Michael, we have a very, very special episode tonight. It is the return of the hockey show. A little bit of a different format. It is a Philadelphia Flyers Roundtable. We are going to be joined by Kevin Durso from Sports Talk Philly and friend of the blog. There's that word again. Former writer for us at the blog and former writer at Rant Sports, Bob Sharpe.
What is up, everybody? Before we get into it, what's a sneeze guard?
A sneeze guard is one of those things you put in front of a salad bar or something like that protects people from sneezing on it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I guess that's I thought maybe something else. I don't know.
You learned something new. And maybe they also do all different kinds of glass. They can put glass on since we're talking hockey, on a hockey rink.
Oh, how about that? Plexiglass,
exactly.
I don't know. Who knows if it's even plexiglass anymore, and probably something else.
It's probably plastic. But we're here. We're going to be talking hockey tonight. We're going to be talking Flyers hockey. It's your time of the year, sir.
Yes, I am very happy. I'm in a better mood than I was last week. I was in a hotel by myself. It was late at night. I was just very lonely and in a pissy mood. And I learned a lot about myself that day. I learned I'm not a window person on a plane anymore. I like to lean to the left, and obviously I like to lean to the right, and the window's on the left, so that didn't really go good for me. So a lot of things working against me that day.
Well, I'm glad that you did some soul searching. Are you ready for tonight? Are you flyered up for this? Are you flyered up for the season? It's hard to believe that's actually here.
Yeah, it is very hard. It's actually here. It flew by since they ended without going to the playoffs. But it's weird because they have such a weird start. They're overseas where, as we speak, we're recording at night, but they played at like 3:00 this afternoon, and they lost to a Swedish hockey team.
Well, and we're going to get into that. We will get into that. It is weird, and they start the season over there too, which is weird.
They start the season over there on Friday, and then they come home for one game, and then they go out and do a Canada trip. So it's a very odd start to the season for the Flyers before they actually come home and are home for a little bit, and they're not, at all weird times.
So it's interesting because the Canadian trip usually comes a little bit later in the year, but maybe
it's usually during Christmas time.
Yeah, because the circus, but the circus is no more. So that's interesting. I wasn't even thinking about that.
Well, they've been starting out west the past couple seasons.
Well, they're starting out west in Western Europe.
Yeah,
that's actually,
no. But like when they go out west this early in the season, I can't stay up past 10 o'clock. And it's hard. Yeah, goddamn right, I'm old.
Well, you know what? Why don't we bring in? We'll bring in Kevin. We'll bring in Bob, and we'll discuss this. We'll discuss how this new start for the Flyers, if it's going to be advantageous or not. What do you say?
That sounds good to me.
All right, Michael. As we said, this is the hockey show, the Philadelphia Flyers Roundtable, and I am excited to say that we are joined by. There we got a beer there. What do we have?
Cape May Lager.
All right, very good, very good. We should get a sponsorship from them. We push them every
Goddamn
week.
right we should.
Jesus, all right, we'll tweet at them. Like I was saying before your beer interrupted me there, we are joined by, from Sports Talk Philly, Kevin Durso, and from Section 247blog.com a long, long time ago, and Rant Sports, friend of the show, Bob Sharpe. Gentlemen, how are we this evening?
Great, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So
Can I just point out before we get started that Kevin Durso picture comes up on our Skype. What a handsome young man this guy is. Let me just say that off the top of the chart.
You're freaking out the guests. This is not appropriate.
Well, here we go. I'm gonna pump both their tires here because Kevin, I'm excited to talk to you because we go back and forth Twitter a couple times. I've asked you a couple questions. You answer them. I thank you for that. The same with Bob. Bob puts out great tweets. He puts out great tweets, both retweeting and making his own tweets. So I'm really happy to have these guys here. It's just unfortunate you still have to be on the damn show tonight.
Well, someone has to point and click. We fired the producer, so here I am. Let's get into it a little bit, okay? Some news broke recently with the Flyers, and I'm going to get your take on it, gentlemen. How concerned should Flyers fans be? And we're talking about Nolan Patrick and his migraine issue. Kevin, we'll start with you. How concerning is this? Is this really something that is? It seems like it's going to plague him for the foreseeable future. He's had concussions in the past. Flyers fans hear concussion, and at least in my mind, I have visions of Scott Stevens laying out Eric Lindros. How concerned should everybody be with this Nolan Patrick situation?
I certainly think they should be mildly concerned for sure at minimum, just because, I think of the first thing I think about when I think about this injury is the fact that there's an indefinite time frame on this recovery. You don't really know where this is going to go for right now, and it's like concussions to that sense. That now they claim that this is a separate issue from the concussions. He does have a family history with migraines. So it may not be necessarily related to a concussion, but he does have a concussion history going back to juniors down to a couple seasons ago. His rookie season, he had a concussion. He had a concussion late last season. So it is mildly concerning just because of the fact that here's another injury for this kid who just can't seem to stay on the good side of health. And the fact that it's indefinite, the fact that you kind of have to approach this season, at least to start, with no time frame other than week to week to know what his injury is. The thought process behind this offseason was that you were going to have a pretty definite 1-2-3 lineup for your center position, and now that's really brought into question big time when you don't have a definite time frame on when Nolan Patrick will return to the lineup.
Bob, you want to chime in there?
Yeah, I actually concur with everything Kevin just said. The big thing I was going to, talk about was the fact that you weren't going to have the pressure of having to be the number 2 overall pick this year because of the addition of Kevin Hayes. And we can kind of get into that aspect later of what they paid Hayes and the term and everything like that. But the fact that he could be kind of that third center and not have all that pressure, I think would have opened him up to a lot better quality scoring chances. And I think he would have had a chance to play with some pretty good skill players on his line. So it's just an really unfortunate injury. And with the CTE stuff in the NFL and everything that goes on, and some of the stuff we've actually seen with hockey players, more kind of in the enforcers and everything they've dealt with off the ice after retirement, it's something that you have to take the utmost caution with. So I completely understand where both sides are coming from here. I mean, the Flyers, they did their due diligence in trying to determine the actual diagnosis. That was the biggest thing. They didn't know if it was just a regular concussion or was these migraines. So it's just unfortunate. It's just like Kevin said that, with his health, he hasn't been able to get it going. And it's going to hurt this team, I think. But maybe it opens the door for someone like a Morgan Frost to dominate the AHL, maybe make his presence known there and get a call up later this year and make an impact on the NHL club.
I mean, the thing is, there is a lot of pressure on him, Bob. I really think that with Nico Hischier having really 2 decent years so far and growing as a player, that there is a lot of pressure on him too, because he was for a long time the consensus number 1 overall pick up until probably like 2 weeks before the draft. So there is some pressure for him to perform, and he hasn't done it yet. A lot of people had him penciled in for 50 points last year, and that didn't really happen all that much. It is unfortunate he's got the migraines. Hey, look, having a history of migraines is not fun. I know somebody that has them and has struggled with them, and when they are on, it's hard for him to do his job. So let alone being a professional hockey player and have to skate around and then worry about having to be hit on top of that. It's unfortunate. You want him to heal up as quick as possible. The one good thing, he's not under pressure because he's going to go down a 3C now because Kevin Hayes is going to take over a 2C. So he does have that time to really flourish once he does come back, and hopefully he comes back soon.
Yeah, I mean, a key cog to the wheel here, right? And it seems very Flyers-like to have a key piece down and out early.
Is he a key piece anymore, though? Is he really viewed as a key piece now? I mean, that's a question for anybody. If anybody wants to answer that, I don't think he's a key piece anymore. With him
either.
Once you go down outside of that top 6, I don't count you as a key piece. I put you in as a role player until you get back up into that top 6.
I think there's still hope that he can be a key piece. I agree that he's not one at this current moment. I mean, a key piece can be part of your depth too. I'm not going to say that it's not, but once he exited that top 6, and the expectations from last season being that he was going to be a much better point producer and fill the second line center role, that it changes everything now that he's going into a much more, well, we assume he would be in a sheltered role in the third line for sure, and it would help create more chances, build some confidence. And I think the hope there is that it would eventually get him back into the top 6 down the road whenever the time comes. But yeah, I mean, for right now, I don't know that he's a key piece. He's not the same as where Claude Giroux, Sean Couturier, Travis Konechny are. You don't want to lose guys of that caliber any point in time during the season for any reason. You don't want to lose a Nolan Patrick either, just because of the depth he provides, and his skill level is great for a possible third line role. But I don't see him as a key piece to this lineup like he was a year ago.
Is he a key piece for a trade later on in the season if he's healthy?
I can't see them being interested in going there yet. The longer this prolongs over his career, the more likely it happens. But I can't see this regime trying to give up on a prospect at 21 years old just because of the injury history just yet. I think some of these things are correctable, I guess you could say. I think they feel like they can find a solution to the migraines. They feel like they can get everything else squared away and get him on track. So I don't think that they're going to explore a trade route that early. I think they hear the outside noise too much of the history of giving up on prospects too early.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. I'll let Bob chime in a second. The only reason why I said he would be a trade piece for later on in the year because it is a different regime now. That's my opinion on that. That'd be the only reason why.
That's true. They have no attachment to him, but I also think they'd be selling low, and I don't think their return value would be anything of significance. So I don't think you want to give up on, like Kevin said, a 21-year-old prospect, the number 2 overall pick, because then you're almost admitting, even though it's the previous regime, that you were wrong from kind of a whole presidential and overall organizational standpoint. So I don't think they're going to give up on him yet either.
You guys have mentioned regime change multiple times, and I appreciate you rolling right into the next little topic here, next question. There has been a regime change. Chuck Fletcher has his guy, Alain Vigneault. He is joined by Michel Therrien. I always love the French-Canadian names. And Mike Yeo. Completely different look here with the Flyers, making some changes. Not the coach I think the fan base initially wanted, which is not a surprise. It's always the next guy that they get. But Vigneault seems to me at least, it seems to be kind of what the Flyers needed right at this point in the grand scheme of things. Not being successful the past couple years. Is this move going to pan out? Let's bring it down small term this season. What are the expectations that the fan base should have with a new coach in his system? Bob, start with you.
Okay, so here comes my scorching hot or freezing cold take, depending on however you want to look at it. I think Alain Vigneault was the best offseason acquisition the Flyers made. No doubt about it. He brings so much credibility into that locker room. We don't have to watch the curmudgeon college coach kind of throwing Yuri Laterra out there every night. And I just feel like that we have an actual NHL coach again. I don't know if you guys have watched that kind of 24/7 thing that they've been doing on NHL Network. I mean, I'm falling in love with the guy, with the way that he has set the expectation, and he's made it very clear that these guys are going to be battling for position. I mean, they lost a preseason game, and he cut half of the training camp roster. So he means business. In terms of this season's results, I think you can only handle the cards you've been dealt. I think they've made some improvements, but they're only marginal. And based on what the rest of the division and the conference has done, I think they're going to still be in that same spot as last year, that they're going to be fighting and clawing to get into that wild card spot. But I think you're going to see a better on-ice product because of his presence.
Kevin, your thoughts?
Well, I do want to piggyback off of what Bob said for a second, because I've been watching the same series. I've been watching the Behind the Glass series on NHL Network. I just caught the most recent episode tonight, actually. And to look at, here's the thing I'll say about this. From going to a few practices earlier in training camp before this series ever aired, I kind of got a little sneak peek of what Alain Vigneault was like, not only on the ice with the way he runs a practice, but a little bit off the ice as well. And when you see him interacting in a certain way with just from a media standpoint, it comes across really quickly that this guy has much more of a personality that's out there for people to see than Dave Haxtell ever showed. So you get past that right away, and you see a guy who not only has the resume to back up all of his years coaching so far, but it's a completely different take on things. I don't think he's afraid to get serious at times. I thought one of the best things about the most recent episode of that series is him coming into a locker room down 2-1 in the Boston preseason game that was in Philadelphia a few weeks ago, and sitting here telling the guys, I know it's preseason, but we've got to pick it up out there. That's what you'd want to see from a new coach. You don't want to see someone who settles for results that were common in the past. You want a guy who pushes this team a little bit, and that's what I think is going to be great about the season. I can't really give you a good place to start with expectations. I kind of agree with Bob that they'll be fighting and clawing for a lot of what they have to get this season, but the bottom line of that is that I think the idea of a whole new regime and a whole new coaching staff puts the onus on the players here. You're going to learn a lot about the makeup of this team and the players on this team this upcoming season because of the fact that it's all on them now. They can either respond to this coaching staff, go out and work hard from start to finish in as many games as they possibly can to earn as many points as they can and get back to the playoffs, or they can crumble, start slow all the time, and be the same team we've seen for the last 5 years. But at least at that point in time, I think we'll realize it won't be the coaching staff that's the problem anymore. It'll be the players, and it'll force more changes down the road if that's the case. So I think a lot of guys are playing for their life here this year, honestly. It's, everybody's changed everything else around the franchise, so to speak, and now you're going to see what the players are made of here and what these veterans, how much they really want to win, because you've got a guy who should be pushing them and steering them in the right direction. And I've always liked what Alain Vigneault said from the beginning, from when he took the job, and he's continued to say it throughout training camp. He's not here to teach anybody anything or anything. He's here to be a guide. He's not here to take care of the job. He's here to guide the players to complete that task. And I like that about a coach who knows that he's not the one who's giving you the on-ice results. He's got to make sure the players are ready to do what they have to do. And I've liked his practices so far. I like a lot of what he's done. And at this point, I like that it's going to be on the players, that we'll see what this team is made of based on how the team plays and how they respond to his coaching.
The only complaint I have about Behind the Glass is it's too short. It's only half an hour long. It should be longer.
Too many commercials too.
And too many commercials. You miss the curses.
You and the cursing. That's all you want is cursing.
I've said this over and over again. It's part of real life. It's part of the game. Let me pay extra on my cable bill. Let me pay, $1 million instead of $900,000 so I can get the unedited version of a game without an announcer. And let me hear what they're saying on the field. HBO, if you're listening, do something about this. Get this back onto your playing field so we can hear it the way it should be. But, Behind the Glass, it's great to see Nimdev look. Bob, you're not too far off, man. I mean, Alain Vigneault probably is the best acquisition over the offseason. You have a regime in place now as far as the coaches go where it is no bullshit. It is put up or shut up time. Michel Therrien is a hard nose too. I'm glad he's here. I'm glad he's here to push these guys, both veteran and young. The one thing that with him is there are some veterans on this team that sort of are lax at times. Hopefully puts a little jolt into their system and makes them want to play a little bit harder. We'll find that out, this week coming up. Overall, though, I'm glad he's here. This is a move that had to be made, and hopefully pans out. He does have a track record of having a lot of success early in his tenure whenever he comes to the team, both Vancouver and the Rangers. So let's see if it pans out here, because early success means with this team possibly a late round cup run or even in the cup finals.
Yeah, well, you better keep drinking that Cape May there, buddy.
Well, I said early tenure. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be this year, but that's the one thing that's eluded him in, as being a head coach, is that Stanley Cup. He's won the President's Cup. He's had very successful teams. He hasn't won that cup yet. If it wasn't for Lundqvist stood on his head against LA that one year, or else, that could have been it. And he ran into the Boston Bruins when he was in Vancouver. And so he's due. In my mind, any sort of coach that's in the NHL right now, he's the one that's due next. So let's see what happens.
I will say he comes off on TV as, I don't want to call him a hard ass, because that's not necessarily the right term, but we'll call him that. He comes off as a hard ass. And to me, that's exactly what this club needed when you had I'm looking at a broom right now, leaning up against the wall as we're recording this, and that could have been Dave Haxtell, for all I know. I mean, that was the attitude and the makeup of that guy.
Doubt. Yeah, he was like watching paint dry.
We mentioned additions, and Bob and Kevin and Michael, you all agree that he's the biggest addition. Kevin Hayes, Matt Niskanen, they've joined the fold. Some veteran guys. What's the take there? Are these the moves? It's not the move the fan base, I think, wanted, but I don't necessarily think that they're horrible moves.
No, they're not horrible moves. They're not horrible moves at all. Kevin Hayes, they overpaid for. But that's the way the NHL is now. You're going to overpay a little bit. There is no more you overpay for success. You overpay for what the success can be. And they did for him. So let's see what happens. I don't think it's a bad move. Maybe it's a little bit more in salary than you want to do. Maybe it's 1 or 2 years more than you want to do. But, hey, he's here. We needed him. It's obvious we need him more than ever with Nolan Patrick now being out, because he was the 2C last year. Now he can move down to 3C whenever he comes back. Matt Niskanen, he's better than Racco Gudas. You got a little bit of an upgrade there. And I know this might not come off as a pop-up opinion, as the rest of these guys might chime in here. I like the Justin Braun move. I think this helps. This gets rid of McDonald and brings him in. He can be better. He's going to make these 6 defensemen better overall.
You can go, Kev.
Well, I'll chime in on all 3 of these players here. First things first, I'll start with Kevin Hayes on this one, because, sure, it's an overpayment, but I look at the other free agents that were out there, or players you could have gone after, and it's the way that the free agent market works anymore, where you've got guys who kind of know their path before we get to July 1st anymore. Mm-hmm. Artemi Panarin knew where he wanted to go months ago, and basically had his agents do the work, get me to the New York Rangers, and that's how that happens. So they were never players for Artemi Panarin, and the same thing with Matt Duchene. Matt Duchene's wanted to go to Nashville for years. So you take those guys out of the picture, and you realize you could have had anybody as your general manager working with these free agents. It wouldn't have happened. And in order for it to have happened, you would have had to have spent twice the amount of money that some of these other teams had just to make it completely worth their while and floor them with an offer. So I think you take what you have to do to get a Kevin Hayes, because outside of those two names I just mentioned, I don't know if there was any other forwards who really stood out other than Kevin Hayes at that point. So you get a guy who was a clear-cut top free agent in the group. You jumped the gun on everybody else in free agency, and you made a trade for him so you had extra time to negotiate. That's being proactive and trying to make an improvement effective immediately. And what I like about Kevin Hayes is I think he's got a great two-way game. I've loved his work on the penalty kill in the preseason, and the offense can be there. He's had a couple of good chances. He's made some good setups, and I like his presence on a second line with other guys who can be heavy. That's the way that the players have been describing it, and Alain Vigneault described it that way to me as well. That they're a heavy line. When you play Kevin Hayes with Jake Voracek and JVR, or with Oscar Lindblom, insert any two of those three in there with him, you get a line that's really heavy, goes hard on the forecheck, and I like a lot about that. And I think Kevin Hayes is going to fit in really well here, and I think fans will come around on that. I of course, preseason results, final score-wise, haven't been great, obviously, and the record hasn't looked good, so I've got people who are trying to tell me that the Kevin Hayes contract is the next Vincent Lecavalier contract. Give the guy a year first, please. I mean, I know we all want to jump off. I know we want to jump off the bridge.
Old by the time
right, and I know we all want to jump off the bridge when we see records like 1-3-3. But don't go jumping off any bridges yet. Let the regular season get underway and let's see this guy in action. First of all, I also thought that the Flyers had an excellent penalty kill during the preseason, much different than anything that we had seen in years past when Dave Haxtell was running the show. So I think that's a good place to start. Now to the defenseman for me, and I wasn't as overly impressed with the Niskanen deal, and I think the only reason I wasn't is because of the money that was retained on Gudas. Otherwise, it is an upgrade, and one thing I like about Matt Niskanen is how he really has told it like it is, and I like his experience around the division. He knows a lot of these teams really well, from playing with them, having to play against them constantly. He's won a Stanley Cup with Washington. He's spent time in Pittsburgh. He knows these teams. He knows these systems. He knows these rivals that are going to be played 3, 4, 5 times a year. So he's got a lot of experience in that, and it's a competitive division, and he's prepared to be a leader on that front, and I think that's a good fit. And I'll jump in on this as well with Justin Braun. I wasn't sure how that deal looked at first. After watching him so far in this preseason, I'm on board with this so far because he really does. Chuck Fletcher called him seaweed during training camp because everything that comes near him, it kind of gets swallowed up a little bit. When he makes good plays like that, he's had a couple moments where he gets beat pretty badly during the preseason, but it happens sometimes during a game, and you hope your goalie's able to bail you out. For the most part, though, I haven't seen anything that looks overly weak, and I've liked him as on a pairing with Shane Gostisbehere. I think that's actually a good pairing. It allows Braun to play the stay-at-home role where he's comfortable. Gostisbehere gets to kind of be that offensive-minded guy, and there have been situations where Gostisbehere looks much more confident in moving the puck again, like we saw in the year 1 and year 3 of his career, where he's been oozing with confidence and able to take charge with the puck and be an offensive leader in that sense, and that just only helps the Flyers moving forward too. So I liked all three of these moves. The more and more I got to see these players and got to see what they could bring more than just from a locker room veteran presence. They still have ability, and this can be a better team, and I think the system is going to work a lot better too to prevent – the main goal is keeping the puck out of the net, and I think the system is going to lend to that a lot. So I like these acquisitions. I think all three of them have a key focus on the defensive side of the game, and then can bring a little something to the other end as well. Maybe not so much the two defensemen, but Hayes has got the ability to bring something to the other end for sure.
All right, I'll jump in now. I think the thing with the Hayes deal is I'm actually fine with the overpay. It's when we start talking about long-term contracts in terms of the actual term of the contract. So in a perfect world, I wish it was 5 years and not 7. I think years 1 through 4, you're going to get a lot of value out of the contract, as Kevin mentioned. The two-way aspect is often by fans not appreciated enough. You do need the center to be a very valuable defender down low. So he does bring a big upgrade in that area, and I do think being familiar with Alain Vigneault when he was with the Rangers is going to help him in terms of his offensive production, and the fact that they've already started him on power play unit number 2. I think it's going to lead to maybe in that 60-point range even in his first season here. So I am excited that he is giving them kind of that boost that they sorely lacked last year. I agree with Kevin in terms of Niskanen. I don't like that they retained salary for a division rival and you're helping them in their terrible cap situation. I just don't think it's smart financial management. Some of these moves, it reminded me so much of the Sixers and the Hinkie exit and the Colangelo aspect coming in, and it was like they didn't learn anything from what they had done in years past. They went into this offseason with $30 million in cap space, and now they have about $1.8 million in cap space, which is very Holmgren-like, and that bothers me a lot. I understand from the up aboves that they needed to get a competitive team back on the ice because Hextall just did not pay enough attention to the NHL product for too long. But I think they have hindered their long-term prospects much more this offseason because you go into next offseason with only about $12.9 million in cap space, and I understand we're going to have Seattle expansion, we're going to have a new TV deal, and the cap should rise a little bit, but you're going to have some of these RFAs that you need to retain. Now, conversely, I will give Chuck Fletcher a lot of credit for getting Travis Konechny and Ivan Provorov locked up for 6 years instead of doing bridge deals. So I think that is going to end up looking genius like the Couturier deal did, where you're going to be getting excellent value for the latter half of their deals, whereas on the Hayes deal, you're going to be getting the better value on the front end. So I think it's a mixed bag here. I think they had it's not an objectively excellent offseason like another GM in a different sport said earlier this year, but I think they had an overall pretty solid offseason in terms of getting some guys in here that'll bring a little bit of excitement. And I think with Alain Vigneault's system, I think these parts fit a little bit better with what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Bob, you summed it up. They signed both Provorov and Konechny to 6-year deals versus, Laine signing for the 3 years, Rantanen signing, Rantanen did sign for the long term, no, but like these 3-year deals and Werenski signing for the 3-year deal, those qualifying offers are going to be huge.
Braden qualifying offer is going to be just outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, I think Laine is going to be $9 million, I think, and Werenski's is going to be $7 million. So I mean, those are big deals right there. When the time comes with the bridge deal, I mean, who knows? With the new TV deal, they could be like chump change. But Konechny and Provorov's deals are going to be just steals come 3 years from now.
3 years from now, but 3 years from now is great, but we kind of have to look at the now, right? I mean, that was the message that seemingly came down from up high, is that this team is in a win now mode.
Yeah, they're in a win now, no, for sure. Yeah, you have a 3 to 4 year window now with Giroux, Voracek, Couturier, and then you have Ghost, Provorov, Konechny, Farabee coming up, Frost. You have a 3 to 4 year window now with that core group.
Kevin said it, preseason wise, while the scoreboard might not say it, it was a very good preseason for the club. Who surprised you guys with the success that they had this preseason?
I'll jump on that. Michael just mentioned him, Joel Farabee. He's been awesome. He is flying all over the ice. He is dominating puck possession. Someone, I think, compared it on Twitter to actually what Oscar Lindblom did a couple years ago, where he came in and was doing everything right except putting the puck in the net. So I think once Joel Farabee gets a goal under his belt, he's really going to be in a good position. I think they should keep him. I think you just let it ride and you let him figure it out, because that talent is immense. But I think I know I'm butchering his name, but Tarwinski, or however I keep getting his name.
Yeah, you got it right.
Yeah. Yeah, you like that little Polish little suffix there.
I was going to say, you got to butcher the Polish guy's name? Come on now.
I think I would know with my mom's maiden name being a ski. But anyway, I think he's been very good as well. I think he goes to the AHL, though, to start with. He might get a call-up later in the year, depending on injuries. But Joel Farabee has definitely stood out to me. He's been flying all over the ice. He's been very, very good.
I'll echo both of those guys because I've been impressed with both of them. Farabee kind of was on my radar from the beginning going into camp just because it seemed like we were talking about three names in particular. It was going to be Farabee, Morgan Frost, Isaac Ratcliffe, and that's where we kind of kept our attention. And Ratcliffe just continued to look a step slower than the other two did, so you kind of factored him out and you go, okay, he needs that year and probably maybe the whole year in the AHL just to get up to pace with the professional game. But Frost and Farabee continued to stand out as everything went on. And I think we got so focused on them that when Twarynski started to take off and have continually put together some really decent games, I thought that he was coming out again as one of these surprises. He had a strong camp a year ago, too, and he was one of the last cuts then. I think he does make this team, actually, quite honestly, just because I think, first of all, I think he makes it because he's a winger and not a center. I think the Flyers are going to have some issues, because my other surprise is Connor Bunnaman, who is likely going to start the year as the fourth-line center, but I think you're going to run into something soon enough, whether it's Nolan Patrick's health improves and he's able to come back into the lineup. Maybe you decide that you want to play, maybe it turns into something different where you see somebody in the minors who's doing something really well. Yerman Ruvsov had a good camp for the most part up until the last couple games before he got cut, and he fits the role of a center. You've got Mikhail Vorobiev, who can kind of play center wing. Frost is obviously a natural center who can also play wing. All these guys are going to kind of be pushing from the American League at that time, so they're going to be kind of on the outside looking in, but not far behind by any stretch. So I think Bunnaman's probably got the shortest time here, assuming he does make this team and start the year with the Flyers. Twarynski's kind of got a similar thing. I think he's going to be around longer than Bunnaman would, but Twarynski's kind of hanging around until Tyler Pitlick is ready to go, I would assume. But then again, you want to keep around enough bodies and have some people who are able to jump in on a moment's notice. It's not going to be one of these prospects, but you want to keep guys around like that. And I'm just not sure how long the Chris Stewart thing's going to last. I don't think he's one of the top 13 forwards on this team at this point to hold that spot. I'd rather see them include some of these prospects in the lineup and scratch a guy like Pitlick or scratch a guy like, and somebody else who you can pull out. I don't want to say scratch Michael Raffl, for example, because I think Raffl offers some value on the fourth line. But somebody in that range who's a veteran who you feel like you can pull from the lineup and not have to worry about them being able to jump back in when you need them to. But ultimately it'll come down to whether or not they feel there's a need and room for a prospect to play on a regular basis. But those are the three that are still hanging around that I've definitely been impressed with. Really, especially Bunnaman, because I don't think Bunnaman was really on the radar at all coming in. I think Twarynski had at least carved out a little bit of a name for himself from the previous year. He was hanging around. It was not as surprising to see him hang around late, but Bunnaman was really off the radar, and Bunnaman kind of has that Oscar Lindblom story to him as well, where he's a mid-round pick, kind of comes in as a guy who was a little bit of an unknown from just playing in a different spot, whether it was playing in the Lehigh Valley last year or whatever. And I think he's done a good job of starting to make a name for himself. He had another goal in this game today, and I think it goes a long way as everything continues. His ability to be around the net, to be a goal scorer around the net, he did have, I don't think it was exactly 20, but it was close to 20 goals in the American League last year, and that's a pretty good number for someone who's just coming up and getting started and at that level. So I've certainly been impressed with him as well.
I think that Curtis Stone injury really opened the door for a lot of these guys too, because it really seemed like management was pushing for him to win that fourth line winger spot. So I think that's what's really opened the door for a lot of these guys to hang around. And please just get rid of Chris Stewart.
I think Chris Stewart is there until Tyler Pitlick is ready or Nolan Patrick's ready. I think those are your interchangeable part there. But, just switching gears a little bit, because Joel Farabee is definitely, as far as the preseason goes, is this a 9-game tryout? Is this a 9-game trial for him, whether or not he stays or goes, or is he really going to stay? I think it would be good if you kept him around. I think it pushes the older veteran guys around here as well as the younger guys to play better because, look, this kid came, he saw he's still here. We got to step up if we want to see some ice time, especially those bottom 6 guys. So I'm hoping it's not a 9-game tryout. I'd love to know what you guys say about that. This is one of the things, Kevin, I wanted to pick your brain about.
I don't see it being a tryout. I mean, if it is, and I know Chuck Fletcher said there's a lot of possible moving parts here in the first 6 weeks of the season. Unless he absolutely hits a wall the way that Mikhail Vorobiev did a year ago and really is just struggling to keep up with the pace and it looks like the schedule's getting to him, I don't see this being a tryout because, I think what was telling about his game over the course of the entire preseason and especially that final preseason game before the trip over to Europe against the Rangers, he takes 10 shot attempts, had 5 shots on goal, hit the post twice. It's not like he's not creating opportunities for himself, and it's not like he's not improving as these games go on. And as the games go on in the preseason, you start to see more action against legitimate NHL players. He's not playing against nobodies anymore like he would have in a rookie game or something like that. He's playing against legitimate NHL talent that has been around for years and years, and he's making it look sometimes fairly easy. He had a brilliant play in that game against the Rangers, the last preseason game before the trip to Europe, where he just makes a great play standing up at the opposing blue line, creates a turnover, and then goes in and creates a scoring chance for a teammate. And it's a play that a veteran makes that you think about the hockey smarts there that a veteran would have. And here he is at 19 years old, and he's making it happen and making it happen relatively easily. And I think that's so impressive, and I've loved his work ethic from day one. I think he's a hungry player. He's definitely got the skill, but it's his smarts that really help him stand out. And I've seldom caught him out of position, quite honestly. I don't feel like he's ever out of a play in the way that you don't want to see him. You don't want to see him lost and not being able to defend the position or do whatever he has to do at the other end of the ice. And he looks like he's got an all-around game to him. And that's why I just don't think it's a tryout, because somewhere along the way here, he probably within those first 9 or 10 games that he would have here is going to be able to find the net at some point because he keeps generating chances. And I think as soon as this happens, as soon as he gets one of these to go in for him and not hit the post and not be a great save by a goalie or not be put just wide of the net or whatever it is, I think it's going to start opening up for him because this is the part of the basis of his game. He was advertised as an offensive skill kind of guy who has the ability to score goals, and I think you're going to see that eventually. I don't see it's literally the only thing he hasn't been able to do in the preseason so far. Everything else has looked really good.
And just to add on quickly to that, Michael, to answer your question, the veterans I know and stories I've read have spoke very, very highly of him in terms of pushing the veteran players to be better because his energy has been infectious. AV has also talked about his hockey IQ. He is well advanced for his age in terms of the way he sees the game. It moves slower for him, even at the NHL level now. So I agree with Kevin that I don't think this is going to be a tryout. I think he's going to stick because he's just that talented, and I think they're that enamored with him.
The only thing I worry about with him, he has hit a lot of posts, but I'm okay with that. I mean, because he's putting shots on goal. He's, good stuff happens when you put it on net. Is the amount of hockey that he's played over the past year, and worry about burnout at such a young age because you want to kind of conserve him for the years to come. And I would love if he's here all year round. I just hope that he can, being against NHL talent, he can last the whole season if he is here.
I think that's a fair concern.
Yeah, I think it's fair as well, and I'll say this too. I don't have that concern in the early going of the year. This team's got so many days off in between games to start the season, so he should remain fresh through most of October and into November, but that's where you start to worry about someone hitting the wall. I think it happened really early for Vorobiev last year, where just after maybe about 10 games, you started to not even notice him after a while, and that's what you don't want to have happen with Farabee. So I do think there is enough motivation on his part, though, to try to avoid that. And not only that, but I think he knows of the amount of people who are waiting in the wings behind him that could come up and take that spot away and bury him in the minors for the rest of the year. So he's as motivated as anybody I've seen. He kind of gives me the same vibes that Carter Hart did, where Carter Hart was so determined to make the team out of camp last year, and it didn't happen, but even if it didn't happen, he has such a determination for getting to that end goal that I don't see him having a problem staying motivated and trying to at least continue to work hard for it. I wouldn't be concerned about much else with him. I think there was a certain point early on in training camp where we could kind of look around and realized after a certain point that it didn't matter whether or not he was scoring goals or not. He was carving out a path for himself to make the team very early on from one of the first practices where they had him on with Sean Couturier and Claude Giroux, and he's playing on a line with them during camp drills, to getting into games with the same groupings and still hanging around the top 6 even sometimes, where you just wouldn't have expected it for the 19-year-old to be the one who kind of took the reins over. I don't think we all expected Joel Farabee to be the guy we're all talking about over Morgan Frost, but that's what's happening for right now, and it's unfortunate in Frost's case, because Frost, I think, had a spot coming for him if he didn't get hurt. But that's why I don't think it's going to be long before he's up as well. But it's about opening up spots, and there wasn't much available this season with the way that the Flyers made moves in the offseason, and Farabee made it a point to come into camp ready to go, have a great camp, and I think he's earned it here.
We've been recording for a little over 40 minutes, and that was the first time we discussed a Flyers goaltender in any form or any fashion. That has to be some kind of record. Usually that's the first thing that comes up out of Flyers fans' mouths is goaltending. You brought up Carter Hart. What are the expectations? What should the expectations be? Let me rephrase it. What should the fans' expectations be on Hart this year? The way he played a year ago was nothing short of incredible. Is it one of these things where this is the next great hope, or should fans kind of temper their expectation a little bit? Watkins, we'll start with you, sir.
We haven't talked about him in 40 minutes because we know he's the goalie. This is the first time we're coming into a Flyer season where goaltending is not the question mark. He's your goalie. This is how it's going to be. Is he for real? Well, this year is going to be a telltale sign. I don't expect him to win the Vezina this year, but I expect an improvement from last year. You just don't want to overwork him. They got to find the perfect, medium workload for him. To see how good he'll succeed. But this is your guy, and we don't have to worry about it. He's going to play good. He's going to play as good as the defenseman in front of him play for him, and the other guys play for him. That's the thing. He was hung out to dry a lot last year. As long as he's not hung out to dry, he'll be fine. I don't expect him to stand on his head every single night like he did when he first came up, but he's here. We should... Like I said, we don't need to worry about talking about a goaltender because we have our goaltender now. Let's worry about talking about the young guys, the other young guys developing and putting the pucks in the net.
I tend to agree. I think that I'm a little afraid because with Flyers fans' expectations, I think they're going to be very unrealistic. I think it's going to be a lot like the Carson Wentz stuff that we see. I think when he has a bad game, it's going to be the end of the world. He's Dominic Roussel. He's going to be a bust. When he steals a game, we're going to be going to the Cup in June. So I think we need to have a little bit of a level-headed expectation. I think there's going to be a lot of good that you're going to see this year. Goaltending was it's been their Achilles heel for my whole life now, 30 years. But I think finally there's going to be a little bit of a steady presence there where I think it's going to be the difference of what kept them out last year was the fact that they had so many they went through 8 goaltenders and none of them could stop a beach ball. So I think with Hart being there, I think he's going to have a lot of really good moments, more good than bad, but it's important that we don't overreact and remember his age in regards to this. So I think he's going to be very good for them, and hopefully Brian Elliott starts playing better than he has in the preseason to serve as a better reliable veteran backup, so that way they don't run him into the ground.
Yeah, I don't think Elliott's here come 2 months from now. I think he's gone and they bring somebody else in. You saw AV mouth the words, you can't win with shit goaltending like that on the bench. So it's just a matter of time. Brian Elliott was not the popular pick to be the backup goaltender. Let's face it, there wasn't really a whole lot out there for backup goaltenders this year. It's chewed up, spit out goaltenders, just repackaged. So they'll find somebody. He won't be here. I say by New Year's he's gone.
Everyone's rooting hard for that Felix Sandstrom call up.
Well, I'll say this to start with for Carter Hart at least, because I look at last year, and I don't really worry too much about him this season either. The first thing that I would have checked on with him before anything else is to watch his first preseason games and see how he appears to be, how he's doing the same things he was doing a year ago. Is he good at tracking the puck? Is he making the routine saves? Is he able to make kind of an acrobatic one when he has to? All those things, he checked off all the boxes for that. And throw out the last preseason game, the one in Switzerland, throw it out. Not even the statistics count towards preseason records at that point. It's just an exhibition at that point. And personally, from what I gathered from that game, I think only one of them was really kind of one he should have had back. The other ones, he lets in a rebound after he gets hit in the mask with a shot. That's tough enough. A screen in front on a power play, a deflection from your own teammate. Those are things that can't happen, that can lead to goals against for him, that can lead to potentially bad games for him, that lead to things like getting pulled in a game, because you need to find a way at some point in time to try to stop the bleeding and stop the snowball effect. Otherwise, I have no concern with him. I thought his puck tracking this preseason was great. The only concerns I would have at this point in time would just be monitoring the workload and trying to make sure he doesn't hit that wall in his second season. And that's just done through kind of picking and choosing your spots. As much as a lot of people weren't enamored with the Brian Elliott re-signing and hanging around as the backup, I don't see him going anywhere this year, just because I think that that's them making their choice for a backup for him. I do hope that they would pick their spots with him. I personally did not like his preseason very much. I did think he had a better performance in the game in Switzerland when he had to come on in relief. It's a little difficult to do when you're asked to come in cold like that, and to have a solid performance, all things considered. Maybe that's a little boost of confidence going in, but I would not be surprised if the early expectation for Carter Hart was to get at least 50 starts this year, and if that number did not start to increase as the year goes on and as he has success. I think that his success will determine how many starts he makes, and his overall health will determine as well. Not that he's a health concern, it's just a matter of workload. It's going to be a matter of how many games he feels he can handle, and I know from just watching him in the past, he's the type of guy who would be prepared to be in the net for every single game if he had to be. And it's obviously not realistic to do that, but I don't think he has a problem with workload, so I can see him starting on a minimum of 50 games, getting into 50 games easily, and then who knows how high that number could go if he starts to perform the way that you expect him to. I do suspect that at some point during the year there will come a little bit of a losing streak for him, one where he hits a little bit of a wall, and maybe it's not all his fault either. It could be a couple games where he lets in 2 or 3, and it seems like a lot for him with the way he's played either early in the year or as the year goes on, but it's not enough with the offense not being able to provide anything for him either in some games. So maybe that just all happens at the same time, and it kind of chalks itself up as a few losses in spots where he's still playing pretty well, but it's not quite up to par with what he's done in the past. But I think expectations for him to have a good year are definitely fair. I just don't think you can go astronomical yet with him. Give him time here. It's his first full NHL season. He's 21 years old. Give him a little bit of time, but I think he's ready to answer whatever call is thrown his way.
Is he the guy? I mean, is this the guy that Bob mentioned it his whole life? Michael, it's your whole life, it's my whole life, and we're a little older than you guys. Kevin, it's your whole life. The Flyers have never had a real, true goaltender. I mean, is this the guy? Can we finally say this is the goaltender?
Bro, I'm still waiting for Maxime Ouellet.
Right. I mean, this is this is the Flyers Marty. Is that? Can we say that, or is it too early?
I think you can. Yeah. I think he can. I mean, this is the player that we've been waiting for. This is what we've been told, since the kid was probably 16 years old, and he's 21 now, 5 years later. This is the guy. This is our Pelle Lindbergh. This is the goaltender that Michael Wiescher grew up with, that we never had the opportunity. So yeah, this is the guy. You could say that this is the guy, but like Kevin said, he's going to have bumps in the road. There's going to be ups. There's going to be downs. Hopefully Flyers fans don't jump down his throat, because goaltending is an extremely hard friggin' position that takes a lot of grooming. That's why goaltenders develop very late. I love if he goes 50 games, that's a perfect amount right there, because that's sort of going towards that old school Marty Brodeur doesn't want to sit type of mentality as he grows, and hopefully can get to the 60 game mark. 60 game mark sort of like a unicorn now in hockey as far as a goaltender goes. But yeah, this is the guy.
I'll agree with that. I think I wouldn't go so far as to say he's there Marty Brodeur or Patrick Waugh or anything like that. I wouldn't go so far as to compare him to a Hall of Famer just yet. But I do think he's the guy, because I really like the Pelle Lindbergh comparison here, because I think of his junior career and the idea of not only being the best goaltender in Canada in Canadian juniors for 2 years running, but also having to go through World Junior Championships 2 years in a row, carrying the weight of an entire nation on your shoulders as the goaltender of that team, losing in a shootout in the gold medal game in 1 year and coming back better the next year to win the gold medal. He's had to play on pretty big stages early in his career, even before he got to the NHL. So if you can carry the weight of an entire nation like Canada on your shoulders for the World Junior Championships, which a ton of people follow in Canada, I think you can also carry the weight of an entire fan base that's been starving for a goaltender for the last 3 decades like the Flyers have.
And I'm going to piggyback off what both Kevin and Michael have said. I do think he is the guy. As Kevin mentioned before in his preseason starts, I mean, he's technically flawless. I mean, he tracks the puck, extraordinarily well. His angles are terrific. There's always a sense, it's almost a Zen-like calmness, dare I say, BDN-like calmness. So I think the biggest thing with
You didn't just go there, did you?
A little bit. I might have.
Oh, my God. Okay.
I had to do it. I had to.
Sorry, continue.
But anyway, I think actually the biggest key, though, with Hart is his mental makeup. I mean, he's been doing the sports psychologist since he was in juniors. As Kevin mentioned, I mean, he's handled the weight of being a goalie for Canada. And, I mean, it's no offense to our fan base. Our fan base is phenomenal. But, I mean, hockey is religion to Canada. So when you're playing on that stage, you better perform or you're going to have to answer for it. And he's answered the call at all of the stages that he's played so far. So I really think that he is the guy. And just because it might not happen this year in terms of winning Vezinas or, dominating from wire to wire, I think you're going to see a guy start to emerge and come into his own and also become a leader on this team. I think he's been very vocal in some of the appearances he's made. He's already made a huge imprint on the community. So I think you're looking at the next star of this team.
Let's talk about some of the current stars that we haven't talked about real quick. We're gonna do expectations on guys. Give me a quick blur of what you think, what the expectations on these guys are. I'll throw it to each of you. We'll start with Kevin. Claude Giroux.
I think a fair expectation for him is to be right around what he was a year ago, maybe a little better than that, quite honestly. You hope that I think one of the things that hindered a lot of the top players on this team was the fact that the power play was awful last year. So the fact that there should be more power play points available, I think Claude Giroux can safely be an 85-point player and easily reach that point-per-game status at that level. So I'll say that much for him.
Bob, Jake Voracek.
Oh, my favorite, Jake Voracek. The potential is there. He just needs to start consistently doing it. I mean, there's no faster skater on this team. He's an unbelievable playmaker. He just needs to start doing it on a consistent basis. There's certain nights where he's all over the ice and he's flying around and wreaking havoc, and there's other nights where he's invisible. So he needs to put it together back like he did a couple years ago when he was dominating with about a point per game pace.
Watkins, JVR.
Rebound year. Has to have 25, 30 goals this year. Power play is set up for it. This is him this year. There's no Wayne Simmons in the beginning of the year to take his spot in the power play. There's no Nolan Patrick to start the season on the power play that could push him. This is his year that he's got to show that he's supposed to be here again.
Kevin, Ivan Provorov.
Ivan Provorov. First of all, definitely continuing to get the same kind of ice time he has in years past. So he'll be playing 25 minutes a night minimum. There's no surprise about that. From an offensive standpoint, I think somewhere around 8 to 10 goals and probably about 40 points would be fair. He's had some good offensive moments in the past. He's had some really successful seasons. I think he needs to take a little bit of a step forward in that direction, maybe not from a goal scoring standpoint, but from a point production standpoint. So I can see him reaching about 40 points.
Bob, Travis Konechny.
Travis Konechny, I think, has a very, very good year this year. I think he's really going to break out in terms of his goal scoring. He's been kind of held back in regards to power play goals. He's really made his name on his 5-on-5 scoring ability. So I think he's going to get greater opportunities on the power play this year, and I think he has a 30-goal season at least.
Bob, what line's he playing on this year?
Ideally, I would like him with Couturier and Giroux on that top line. I want them driving, play. I think they're the kind of perfect blend. He's kind of that test for that line. Couturier is your two-way guy, and Giroux is just your absolute stud and workhorse that he's always been, that steady presence.
Yeah, because that's the one thing for him. I want him to find a home in a line because Hacksaw just had him everywhere and keep him there to develop. That's the one thing I want from him.
All right, Watkins, for you, let's talk about a guy who I feel as though Hackstall screwed around with a little too much, and that's Ghost. What's your expectation for him this year, and does he remain a Flyer?
Yeah, Ghost is here. Ghost is definitely here. I mean, with Ghost, you just let him be the offensive defenseman that he is. Don't expect a lot out of him on the defensive range. Let him shoot the puck from the point and put the puck in the net. That's what you want out of him. And, you don't want him to have as many minutes as Provorov. And thank God he won't have to play with McDonald anymore. Ghost is going to have a good year this year.
Overall expectations as we head into hockey season, I think everybody says, Flyers are going to win a cup and a parade down Broad Street. But is this a playoff team? We've talked them up a lot tonight, and there's a lot of positives. But is this a playoff team?
I'll go first. I'll go first on this one. This is something that they're in an extremely tough division on the Eastern Conference. They're in the Metro. Let's face it. They have Pittsburgh. They have Washington. They have the Islanders. They have Columbus, although Columbus is in trouble. But this is the division that they're either going to either win it or they're going to be close to the cellar of it. I say they fight with the Islanders for the last spot that's available for the playoffs. So I think if they creep in, it's going to be the 8th seed, or they're not going to be in it anymore. But I think they're going to be in. The more and more I think about it, the more and more I think they might creep into the playoffs. They do this to me every year. That I think on paper that they look so good. The penalty killers look so good during the preseason. I think they get into the 8th seed.
Bob, I'm going to throw it to you. What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of think they're going to be in that same position, echoing what Michael said. I do think actually they do make it as the 8th seed. I think the one surprising team, and it really depends on goaltending, I think one of the teams they're going to be fighting with is the New Jersey Devils, just because they've gotten a lot of big upgrades this offseason, but their goaltending.
Hate the Devils.
Oh, we all do, but adding Jack Hughes, obviously, the Subban deal is gigantic. So, but Corey Schneider was a train wreck. He's been a train wreck. So their goaltending is going to be their biggest question mark. I think the Islanders take a step back. Barry Trotz can only do so much, and they lost Lanner. So I think Semyon Varlamov is a bit of a gamble. So we'll see how that plays out. And Carolina, I think, takes a small step back. They just traded Justin Falk. So I think they're going to be fighting with all these middle-of-the-pack teams here for that final spot.
I wish, I'm going to do a sidebar here before Kevin comes in, is I wish we were allowed to talk about other teams in this division because, Bob, you mentioned all of them. Devils, I think, are in contention to win the Metro. They're going to be right up there with Washington. I think Pittsburgh takes a step back this year, because they only have Gino and Crosby. Their defense is awful. Carolina is bad. They lost everybody. The same with Columbus. I already mentioned that. But, if we were allowed to mention other teams, that's sort of what I would say.
This is a really tough one for me because as I'm looking at it, I can't help but think about the way the last few years have gone. And for sure, I'm not going to say anything more than them being a bubble team that probably either barely makes it in or just barely misses. The best evaluator for this season is going to be the way that this team plays divisional opponents. I think they let a lot of games against divisional opponents get away last year. So the way that they play against these divisional opponents, and I don't think that playing one of their divisional games in October is against Columbus, I don't think that's really a fair test, just because I think that this team should be better than Columbus. But trying to look at some of these other teams, New Jersey obviously got better, the Rangers got better, the Islanders kind of stayed status quo from a roster standpoint, but that worked out pretty well for them. And the only change I can really think of that stands out really big time is the goaltending with Lehner gone. Pittsburgh took a little bit of a step back. Carolina's lost. I think one thing about Carolina is that they've lost a ton with Justin Williams not being there. And I know Justin Williams is up there in age and maybe is not as capable of playing at the same pace, but he gives it his all every single game that he would play. And so I think that's a valuable loss on their part as well. And it's just a matter of how this team approaches these games against divisional opponents. And if they can take a few of these in the early going and kind of establish themselves. I've heard people who think this team could be a challenger for the top 3 in the division to the seller of the division and not making the playoffs or even being close to it. And that really comes down to how you play within your division. So I want to get to, as much fun as it is to open the season, and let's play this game in Czech Republic against Chicago, and let's go and do the West Coast road trip in Canada early on in the year. I want to get to those divisional games so I can kind of see this as a measuring stick for where this team lines up against some of the teams they're going to have to play 4 or 5 times a year. And that'll determine where they probably fall into line.
So what you're saying is during the holiday break for the NHL season, we need to have the same people on again to talk about how this all wound up so far.
Not a bad idea.
I concur.
I'm just kicking tires. I mean, I don't know. That's just me.
All right, we've booked it. It's booked. We'll announce a date in the future. All right, gentlemen, we're going to wrap it up, though. Thank you, both of you, for coming on. Bob, where can people find you?
I am on Twitter at rsharp25. I think that's my name now. I always had to switch it. I went back on WIP way back in the day, and they yelled at me for how bad my Twitter name was. But yes, rsharp25 on Twitter.
Kevin, where can everyone find you on the web and Twitter, Instagram, wherever you may be?
Sure. Pretty much any of my social media, Twitter, Instagram it's Kevin_Durso. That's DURSO on Twitter and Instagram. And you can read most of my writings not only on Sports Talk Philly, but also on 97.3 ESPN.com as well.
And
follow both of these guys. They're very, very good at what they do. Kevin, great having you on tonight. I'm really glad I got the chance to talk to you other than the Twitter. Bob, dude, your tweets are unbelievable. Don't change your handle just because WIP told you. They suck.
That's true. And speaking of the 97.3, I get so mad that being out in Bala for regular work that I can't get them all the way out there, because whenever I'm across the bridge, I have it on, because that lineup is just fantastic now. Now with you guys doing all the digital stuff, it's been great to follow. So keep it up.
You do have a phone.
I do, but my headphone jack is all messed up. I'm on a 7, so I mean I'm just way behind the times, first world problem. So I just need a new phone with a new jack so I can start listening to my headphones again and I can stream.
There we go. You can find a podcast on everywhere you find podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, and of course at sportstalkphilly.com. We're there with Kevin. Check us out. Program note. Next week, we were having a baseball roundtable. We are bringing on the boss, Frank Close, and we are going to discuss the Phillies, what they may and may not do, if they fire anybody, and what's going to happen in that offseason.
I got questions for you, Frank. I need answers.
We have a list of questions. Should be fun. Until then, though, hey, good night and good hockey.